speak through them. Take our minds and think through them. Take our hearts and fill them on fire. Thanksgiving, time for thanks. And one word that we often hear at this time of year is gratitude. And it tends to be a bit of a buzzword around our Thanksgiving, and if you listen carefully to our American friends, around theirs. Between the two Thanksgivings, you see it in commercials, in ads, you hear it on the radio, you see it on television. There's almost no way to avoid a word so bound to our cultural vocabulary as with the most widely used words in our vocabulary. And gratitude runs the risk of losing its real nature. Now, if you looked at the Old Testament lesson for today, it talks about the people of Israel. And they, like us, were no different. They were just as inclined as we are to forget the divine origin of all the gifts as people of God. They were inclined, like we are, to imagine themselves as the source and the end of everything they have. They had to be reminded of the ways in which God fulfilled God's promise to their ancestors. At the center of God's personality is a profound generosity. When it comes to blessing and loving the human family, our God holds nothing back. Everything we have is a gift from God, because everything we have belongs to God. The reality of profound generosity stands at the center of today's gospel. Jesus is attempting to escape a crowd of listeners. When they suddenly appear at his side, they ask him when he arrived on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And he says, "I assure you that you are looking at me not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate all the food that you wanted." And that goes back to the feeding of the 5,000. Gratitude, though, is tricky. It can easily become a cumbersome process of making a mental list of everything we would be thankful for at Thanksgiving. Or it could be another source of feeling of spiritual inadequacy. Gratitude in the vision of Jesus is much deeper than a list. It is a way of life that grows out of God's faithfulness to Israel and thus to us. While our consumer culture tells us to be grateful for the stuff of life, Jesus invites us to share the profound gratitude for life itself. When you offer your first fruits to the priest, says God, remember the hand from which the fruit comes. Remember the fact that I gave you that land. So this fruit-bearing, promise-keeping, wilderness-wandering, faithful God is the fountain of life. He's the source of all goodness. Now, on the surface, that sounds okay. But when you scratch that surface, it's challenging everything our culture assumes about assets. We have things because we work hard for them. But we also have to remember that God is the fountain of everything. So the challenge of God in Jesus Christ is this: rethink gratitude. Are you grateful for things? Are you grateful for people? Are you grateful for the things that make our life convenient? Or are you grateful for life itself? What if God had never delivered Israel, or Jesus had never given himself as manna in the wilderness? What would those people of God have given thanks for? Each other? Dust? For breath? For life? Perhaps. Israel's maybe leads today's people of God assembled here in this church, to give thanks and to recall all that God does for, with, and through us, to place ourselves in the ongoing narrative of gratitude. It forces us to practice a counterintuitive, countercultural thanksgiving, giving thanks not for the bounty and the excess, but rather giving thanks for life's most basic gifts, bread and wine and each other. It forces us to acknowledge Jesus' presence at the center of it all, sustaining and nourishing us as the man of God. So my fellow pilgrims on this journey of gratitude, remember all that God has done and give thanks. Amen.